Hey, and welcome to another episode of Lessons on Learning. Quick videos, 15 minutes or less, just talking about how people learn and how we can best use that information to create effective and engaging sessions for our learners. A lot of educators and trainers understand how important it is to have some time at the end of the session to review, reflect, and debrief our learners so that they can fully process and understand the discoveries that they made and the lessons that they learned. But it's very easy for us to make some very small but powerful mistakes when we're doing this. In this video, we're going to go through some of the most common mistakes that educators make and how we can avoid them and what to do instead. Let's get started. So we all know how important that time for review and reflection is, and how important it is to help debrief our learners at the end of the session so they get the very best out of the information that they've heard and the discoveries that they've made. But there are these common mistakes that are often made, and they are quite easy to avoid as long as you know what to look for and what to do instead. And the first, probably most common mistake is getting to the big question too quickly. And the big question is, what did you learn? And although that's a really important question, and it's certainly something we should ask, it's important that we don't ask it straight away. Sometimes there's a lot going off in our learner's head. They've been through a lot of stuff already. There's a lot to remember. And just simply saying to people straight away, okay, have you had a good day? What did you learn today? Well, I'm not always sure. It's not always easy to remember or realize what it is that I learned. Instead, we need to ask them some questions about the order of the day, the content in the day, what happened first and then what happened. Then we need to ask them questions about the successes that they had. What did you find successful? What worked for you? What did you find easy? And then clarify why. And equally, we need to flip onto the other side. What was most difficult for you? What barriers did you come across? What challenged you? And how did you overcome those? What did you do differently? Because in order to get our learners to understand what it is that they learned, we have to really help them figure out what happened, what worked, what didn't happen, and what did they do to enhance those successes and to overcome those challenges. Only then can we go in there and say, okay, so what discoveries did you make? What lessons did you learn? Because they've gone through the processes first, and now they've got to some point where they're making connections and they can say, I learned that if I do this, that's going to happen. But if I do that instead, I can always make it look like this. I learned that. So it's really important to have some preliminary questions, some exploratory questions first before you get to the big question, what did you learn? Let's have a look at the next one. And the next one is equally common, because what happens is we often spend a lot of time focusing on our content and planning our content. And if we get to the end of the content by the end of the class, we feel, that's successful. But we're so often running behind. Things always take longer in real life than they do on paper. And we find that maybe we don't have as much time as we thought to do this debrief and this reflection. So we end up really speeding up and speeding through it. Well, it's really important that we don't do that, because the content is important, and a lot of educators think that's where the learning lives, in the content, but not really. The information lives in the content. The real learning lives in the debrief and the reflection and the analysis of what happened. So try not to speed up. And the only way to do this is to really plan out some time in your day and make that time relatively sacred. It's really important. It doesn't matter how much content I put across, unless I give learners time to reflect and debrief on it, the content isn't going to have the impact that I would like it to have. So be mindful of speeding up too much. The next one is trying to control everything. Look, you might be able to control your teaching and control your delivery. All of that is within your control, but you cannot control someone's learning. You can't control how they process it, what they prioritize, what impacts them, what doesn't. So it's really important that we don't try to go in and control everything. We can add a little bit of influence by putting in certain questions and kind of influencing or trying to direct the flow of the conversation. But really, if a learner wants to go off in a different way and start focusing, reflecting, ruminating on one particular thing, it's not really for us to force them back into our own agenda. Remember, this is their experience, it's their learning, and we can have some influence, but it's not wise for us to try and exert too much control. The next one is to use just one style of delivery when we're doing this, either one type of questioning, or just sticking to, let's say, like verbal questioning. And maybe we can mix things up a little bit. We could use verbal questioning, we could use group discussions, we could use challenge activities, we could use something illustrative, something graphical. It's really important that we don't do everything just in one style, because although we'll hit one or two members of the group, one or two people that resonate with that style, we may well easily lose others. So it's really important that you don't stick to one style and you vary the style of your reflections, your reviews, and your debriefing as well. The next one is, it kind of relates to what we talked about earlier, seeking perfection. Sometimes it's just not perfect. Sometimes it's just not perfect. And it's very rare for our teaching delivery to be perfect, and we accept that. And it's also equally acceptable for the review, for the debrief not to be perfect. And it may not go exactly where you want it to go or deliver exactly what you want. And perhaps there isn't the singing choirs of angels and the rays of, celestial light and the kind of revelations. Perhaps that's not there this time. Perhaps it wasn't the perfect ending that you wanted, but it will have done some good. It will have had some impact. So don't seek perfection in anything, really. The other common mistake is a little bit like I'm doing now, is just talking too much. If you can get your question down from 10 words to 5 words, do that. If you can get away without saying something and you can still influence the direction of the conversation, then try to do that. But your time for talking should have ended now. Remember, this is their review, it's their reflection, it's their debrief. So try to avoid talking too much. Let them do most of the talking. This is one that used to affect me a lot. I wanted the debrief, the outcomes, the revelations, the learning points to fit my idea of what was an ideal outcome. So if I felt that the learner wasn't getting the point that I wanted them to get, I would try and coerce them. And I would try and ask certain questions or manipulate the conversation in such a way, or maybe even lead it, so I could get them to the point where this is what I want them to have learned. So I have to make the experience fit this goal. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a goal, that you shouldn't have an objective. But again, remember, this is their debrief. What did they learn? The question is, what did you learn? The question is not, what did you, the educator, want them to learn? That time has passed. You've set your objectives, you've set your learning targets, and you've delivered. Now it's up to them. It doesn't really matter what you intended to teach. What did they end up learning? So don't try to make it fit your agenda. It has to fit theirs. And last but not least, this is not a mistake as such, it's more of a direction, and it goes back to the mistake that so many educators make of talking too much. And it's, again, be quiet. Stop talking. Let them talk. If I had to say one thing about a lot of educators that I'm aware of, and especially when those educators are in a facilitation mode or they're trying to get learners to a point of realization, is they talk too much and they're interrupting and they're continuing to go on and on and on. Again, a bit like I am now, really, but being quiet doesn't really work on a YouTube video. I have to talk. But think to yourself right now, when there's some silence, Does that silence have to be filled by me? Or is it okay if I just sit in the silence? Because remember, part of this process, debriefing, review, part of the process is reflection. And reflection requires a certain amount of silence. So be quiet. It's okay. Look, I hope that helps, my friends. If you've got any comments about what I've said, I would love to hear them, whether you agree or disagree. I don't mind. We could disagree agreeably on any of this. If you're finding these videos useful, please drop a comment. Please hit a thumbs up. Most of all, subscribe to the channel. I would love more people to be involved watching the channel and get involved in some really good, wholesome discussions with other people, with other educators and other learners. And of course, if you are enjoying it, make sure you tell your friends, and I will see you again soon on another Lessons on Learning. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.